We're going to look at one way to overcome anger, a way that you may have never considered. This is not the only way to overcome, but we're going to look at research. Could your anger problem actually be coming from inflammation? Hey everybody, Chad Cruiser here with Health and Homestead. And this research, I bet you will not hear anywhere else. And if you want to hear more information like this, hit the subscribe button. We get look at life-transforming information on research, scientific studies, on things you may have never heard of. And most people won't talk about it because it's simply not popular. But we're going to delve into the research. So maybe you've struggled with anger, and we're going to look at one way to overcome anger, how to find victory over anger. Look at this study here from JAMA Psychiatry, which is titled Elevated Plasma Inflammatory Markers in Individuals with Intermittent Explosive Disorder and Correlation with Aggression in Humans. There's something that researchers called IED. IED is Intermittent Explosive Disorder. You probably never heard of it. But basically it's a disorder where certain people have these explosive bursts of anger where they're just furious, and it's intermittent. So they may be fine for a while, and then they're just furious, and they're overwhelmingly angry. And so what does this study show? What they did was they looked at three groups of people. People, number one, who had no historical psychological disorders, one group with psychological disorders that did not involve explosive anger, and then people with IED, this intermittent explosive disorder. What they found is that in the people who had IED, that they had these inflammatory markers within their body, that they were elevated in them, but not in the people who had no psychological disorders, or even did have psychological disorders but didn't have an anger problem. So it seems that people with serious anger problems in some cases may actually have inflammation within the body. Now the question can be, so did the inflammation come from the anger, or was the anger actually in part due to inflammation within the body? So let's delve a little deeper. Now this study right here is not specifically about IED. This study is called The Potential Relationship Between Spicy Taste and Risk Seeking. Notice what it says. Study 3 employed an experimental design to manipulate risk-seeking tendencies by having participants experience spicy food taste in the lab. Momentarily savoring spicy foods increased participants' risk-taking in the Iowa gambling task. Now that's a pretty fascinating study, that they actually found that if you were participating in eating spicy food, that it elevated your desire to take risks. So what research is beginning to reveal is that eating spicy food can actually change your character. It can actually change your character. And one of the characteristics of these people with IED is that they were impulsive. And risk-taking and impulsivity may actually have a connection somehow. And so think about that. That what you eat might actually make you more likely to be impulsive. You say, okay, so impulsivity and being crazy angry, those are two very different things. And I agree, but what we've established here is that there is a possibility that spicy food may actually change an individual's character. You said that's crazy. I'd never thought about something like that. Think about it this way. Could things that you put in your mouth actually affect what is going on in your mind? Well, obviously, right? I mean, alcohol, we know that can affect the mind. Think about things like marijuana. People make marijuana brownies, right? That can affect the mind. So we know there are things that you can put in your mouth that you could either eat or drink that can affect your mind and your character, but could it be also true when it comes to spicy food? Here's a study in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, and it says, "You are what you eat, an empirical investigation of the relationship between spicy food and aggressive cognition." And in this study, they found that people who consume more spicy food have more of what they call trait aggression. So we've already seen that eating spicy food could make you more likely to do things like want to gamble or be impulsive. But could it also be that spicy food actually could make you more likely to have anger or aggressiveness in your character? Now, this is what the research seems to be bearing out, that eating these foods, just like other things that you could eat that could impact your mind, so too spicy food could do the same thing. Could it actually get you to the point where you get furiously angry? We're going to delve even deeper. Maybe you've heard of Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong he was also called Chairman Mao. Kind of makes him sound like a friendly old chap, right? And when you look at his picture here, he looks kind of friendly. He's got kind of a nice smile on his face. He may have a nice smile, but the interesting thing was he was one of the top 2 greatest mass murderers in all of recorded history. And he actually had some insight into spicy food, at least in his opinion. Now, the story goes like this. There was a man by the name of Otto Braun who was a part of the USSR, a part of Russia at the time, and he was in the German portion, so he must have been there in East Germany. And what happened is he was taken as an agent for Russia, and he was sent into China to connect with the communists in China. So he was connected with Mao, and as they were connected together, you see people historically coming from Germany, they didn't eat the spicy food that people in other areas of the world had done. And so when Otto Braun makes it into connection with Mao, what ended up happening was that Mao actually mocked him because he was struggling. His palate wasn't used to all that flaming spice. And so he kind of put him down, and he pointed out that Mao had like a ruthless side to him. But notice what he said. Otto Braun said, for example, for a long time I could not accustom myself to the strongly spiced food, such as hot fried peppers, which is traditional to southern China, especially in Hunan, which was Mao's birthplace. Mao said to Otto, "The food of the true revolutionary is the red pepper." He also said, "And he who cannot endure red peppers is also unable to fight." Now, what an interesting thought that Chairman Mao, the greatest mass murderer in history, he said, listen, if you can't handle spicy food, you're not going to be a good fighter. Interesting thought, that he believed that aggression was tied with spicy food. Now, not only Mao, when you go back to Thailand, and who doesn't like Thai food? Thai food is just super, super tasty food, but it's also correlated with being very spicy food in general. Not all of it, but most of it is. Some time ago, we were out to eat at a Thai restaurant, and on the placemat, just like you'll see in some Chinese restaurants, they'll tell you some history of China right there at the table. And at this Thai restaurant, they were sharing some of the history of Thailand. And one of the old emperors or kings of Thailand actually, believe it or not, he outlawed spicy food in Thailand because he said that it caused negative characteristics to the morals of the people of Thailand. Well, you know, sometimes you outlaw things and people go and do it more than ever, and obviously now they have some of the spiciest food in the world. But was he onto something? Was Mao onto something? Was the king of Thailand onto something here? Let's go even further. Here is a study in psychoneuroendocrinology, and the title of it is Marital Distress, Depression, and a Leaky Gut. Translocation of bacterial endotoxin as a pathway to inflammation. Before we actually look at what this study said, I want to give you a little background of how the intestines work. We have a protective layer that encapsulates our intestines in the intestines, and the junctions should be nice and tight so that things like bacteria or undigested proteins don't just pass right through into your bloodstream. And sometimes they do. Sometimes the junctions of your intestines open up and allow undigested proteins and bacteria, as in the case in this study, they can pass right through into your bloodstream. What this does is it causes an increase in inflammation within the body, which inflammation in the body can increase the risk of various diseases like heart disease and other things. But when it comes to marriage and leaky gut, they found in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology that researchers found an increase in intestinal permeability in couples who had more hostile marital arguments. So what did they find? I mean, think about this. They looked at these people and they found that, wow, couples who get angry with each other more often, they have this anger problem, that they have more increased intestinal permeability, so they're actually having more potentially bacteria going into their bloodstream, causing inflammation in the body. So the question is, was it the anger that caused the inflammation, or was it the inflammation that caused the anger? And I think the potential is that it can go both ways. That maybe your mental state can actually affect your gut, but also too, could your physiology be affecting your gut, meaning something is going on in your body. You're putting something in your mouth. Now we know various things can increase inflammation within the gut. Now look at this research right here. Here's a study on intestinal permeability in certain spices. In a study in the Journal of Nutrition, researchers looked at the effect of certain spices and the effect on intestinal permeability. And it revealed that certain spices, including cayenne, paprika, and chili, can increase intestinal permeability. Now, some of you might be angry with me already. You're furious. You say, no, this can't be. Now, and if you give me very angry, statements in the comments, I'll just chalk that up and just figure, you're really struggling with the spicy food, right? Now, you might be saying, but Chad, aren't there medicinal benefits to spices? And the answer is, yeah, for sure there are. Actually, spices are super high in antioxidants, but they could also potentially open up the junctions in your gut and cause increased intestinal permeability and cause inflammation within your gut. So they could have benefits and they could have side effects. Just to share with you real quickly, my perspective of health is very different than the standard medical perspective on health. Standard medical perspective is you take this we'll say pill, it has all of these side effects, but it potentially has this one benefit. I'm not interested in something that has one benefit and a bunch of side effects, or even a benefit and a side effect. I'm looking to have things that just simply have benefits without the negative side effects. So that's just giving you an idea where I come from. So for me, if these things have a negative side effect, I just avoid them personally. But I want to give you a personal experience. So I knew some of the ideas that spicy food could make this difference, that it could make you more spicy and more angry. And my wife and I, we decided to just try it out. We're like, hey, let's just cut out. We didn't know which ones could do it, so we just cut out all spices for 2 months. And what we noticed was, what happened the day after we cut spices out of our diet? Nothing happened. Nothing changed at all in our relationship, in our attitudes, in our mental state. The second day, what happened? Nothing. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh day, there might not have been much of change, but somewhere between like 7 to 14 days, somewhere within there, we began to be more calm, we began to be more patient with each other. Things that might have in the past kind of annoyed us about the other one, instead if they did it, we might just kind of smile and chuckle. And our marriage started getting like better and better and better. We were literally, our marriage was better than it had ever been. And we thought, wow, this is really incredible. And then some of our friends invited us out. They were from another country that eats really spicy food, and they invited us out to a restaurant with that food. And we're like, hey, yeah, we'll go do that with them because we want to spend some time with them. And as we did, we ate that food, and it was super, super, super spicy. And by the way, I love spicy food. Just in case you're wondering, like, maybe this guy just doesn't like spicy food. It's not his culture. No, I love spicy food. And we went out to eat, and it was super spicy, and I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. It was really, really tasty. And you know what happened that night? Nothing. We didn't notice any difference. You say, this really doesn't go along well, Chad, with this, picture you're trying to paint. But the next day, I spoke rudely to my wife. And then somebody did something, and she got frustrated, but she held it in. She didn't let anybody know. But she was super angry on the inside. And she thought, what on earth is going on? And then later that day, I spoke rudely to her again, and she said, why are you acting like this? And I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I think this might be what we ate yesterday. And she said, no. And I said, yeah, I think it maybe is. And so now you say, Chad, nice little anecdotal story. The reality is we've tried this over and over and over, and we are so much more kind, so much more patient when we don't eat these foods. It makes such a difference in our life. And I want to say, hey, listen, if you're one of those kind, gentle, patient people, you don't struggle with these kind of issues, you're probably not going to notice it to the same degree that we did. But it literally has made our marriage better than ever. We have such a better marriage today by simply avoiding this than we ever did before. And it's so simple. And what if it would do the same thing for you? Now, I want to clarify, once again, you won't notice the difference right away. It takes several days before the transition, because if the inflammation is in your gut, imagine if you're cut and you're inflamed somewhere, does the cut go away that day when you stop cutting it? No, it could take a day, it could take 2, it could take a week. And it seems to me that this very same thing happens with your gut. So I want to challenge you. If you struggle with anger, depression, anxiety, if you have a real issue with lust, I would challenge you to try this. That you might see one of the most life-transforming experience by literally putting this out of your diet. Hey, and if you choose not to do this, and it's up to you. We all get to choose how we will live our lives, but I'll bet you've never heard this anywhere else. You've never seen these studies before. And so if you want to find more information out like this, hit the subscribe button. God bless and have a fantastic day.